a task force, some people from the village, some people from different sides of the issue, to take what we've done so far and come up with some suggestions and really study the issue. But I do think, though, that the board needs to have discussion about how all this plays in with our comprehensive plan. Okay, I'm finished.
Jack, you're the expert, I think, on comprehensive plans and their purpose, and is what she describes as needing to be clarified in a comprehensive plan fall within your understanding of a comprehensive plan?
Well, each community has its own objectives.
Yeah, but you defined ours once before.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not saying that the comprehensive plan should be clarified. I'm saying that there's different things that we've identified in the comprehensive plan that we care about. And so if we give them equal weight, how do we resolve this problem? Or do we give them equal
Well,
weight?
the comprehensive plan, Cheryl, sets forth basic objectives, which includes the preservation of flora and the preservation of the woodlands. And that's one of the basic propositions. And I think what you're saying is that you're not satisfied that at least this draft achieves those objectives.
I'm not satisfied necessarily that this draft addresses those objectives.
Same thing.
Okay, then yes.
But normally, the comprehensive plan talks about future development, future land uses. The River Ridge Comprehensive Plan, like River Ridge, is unique. It has much more emphasis on the natural side of this community, frankly, than any others I've ever seen. And that doesn't surprise me, having been around here before. But frankly, I've read this ordinance. I don't understand it. I think the examples are interesting, but on the ground, are they going to work? I'm not sure.
I think the last portion that Bill Swadek tried to put in there is really the thing that's really confusing and probably should be taken out.
But probably the most important part of it, though.
Yeah, what is the part that gives people hope, I think?
Well, I've been real quiet and good here. Can I talk for a couple minutes?
Wait a second, Cheryl, you finished?
Cheryl?
Yes, I would happily yield the floor to Trustee Grant.
Oh, look at this. Thank you for yielding me your piece of flora. I appreciate it. And your flora. It's a massively confusing issue. Massively confusing. What Mr. Swadek tried very hard to do was find a compromise for all the people who were saying, if you limit us to X by Y, then we're going to lose the standard trillium that's over by Z. And he tried to figure out some way to allow that to happen. The problem with an ordinance is the ordinance doesn't have give and take. An ordinance is black and white and it's on paper and it has to be enforced as it's written. If I were preparing an ordinance, which would be impossible to enforce and it would be illegal, I would say on a case-by-case basis, we have to look at these fences and see what's appropriate and see what's not. But that's not an ordinance, and that's not governance, and that's not really being fair to the total population of the village either. And I do get calls. Remember, I'm the resident Bambi lover here. And I do get calls from people who say, my neighbor has a deer fence here, the neighbor over here is putting a deer fence there, the deer are on my property, I love watching the deer, they've got no place else to go. And I'm afraid they're going to starve because so much of their browse has been taken away. And in addition to that, they're browsing everything on my property because that's the only place they have to be. And I do get those calls. Those are the ones that I get. So I know that the people are out there who care and who feel. I know the population of deer in this village has dropped by what? It's probably 50% in the last 10 years. When people come in and say, oh my God, there are so many deer, I say, I used to see a lot more than I do now, and that's the truth. And the counts back that up. our populations have dropped. We've had severe winters. It just has not been conducive to heavy breeding of deer. We have deer being culled in Ryerson, and all these things have contributed to a major drop in our deer population. But again, one deer on your property chewing on that tree that you planted last year is one deer too many in this village for the person who cares about that tree. On the other hand, that one deer in all its glory and representing the natural world is that one deer that I want to sit and watch through my window. So, how do you legislate something in a way that can be enforced for every resident of the village? I don't think there's any way to make a law that is going to make everybody happy. I don't think that there's going to be a law that we can do a law that's going to make everybody completely unhappy. I think what we have to come up with something that makes everyone a little happy and a little unhappy, so that everyone has his own position supported somewhat by his village board, because that's what we're here for. We're here to represent all of the residents of the village. I don't know about this ordinance. I love the flex plan. I think it would be the very devil to enforce. I think it would be really difficult to enforce. On the other hand, Bill taking it out, I think then we go back to a rigid.
But then it's pretty black and white, then it's easier to understand.
It's much easier to understand, but then you've got the person who's got the stand of Trillium over on the left side of his house that he wants to save, and that fence has got to go right through there, and that's really sad too, because much as I love the deer, I love the Trillium too. So I don't know where we go with this. I know that every deer fence in this village, except for a couple which were permitted and somehow got past the permitting. One? Okay. I said two. Shoot me for one wrong fence. Is an illegal fence. Was installed absolutely in violation of the ordinance that exists right now, which is why we have a moratorium on taking those fences down and enforcing that ordinance, as well as no one can put up a new deer fence until we come to some sort of an agreement here. So I know we gotta figure something out, and I know we really need to do it by spring, because come spring, there are gonna be people out wanting to put up deer fences again. And they can't, it's illegal. And if they get caught at that point, they're gonna be forced to take them down. Because they will, knowingly, knowing that we've been discussing this, be doing something which they know is prohibited by village ordinance. So I think we've got until spring to come up with something that works. There's a lot of good stuff in this ordinance. And there's a tremendous amount of thought and a lot of work that's gone into this ordinance. I think it has to be cleaned up and clarified a little bit more before I can vote on it. We gotta get it right, and when we do, I will support it. But it's gotta be at a point where we can send somebody out to take a look at a fence and they can determine based on that ordinance that yes, it's okay or no, it's not. That's where I stand on it.
We'll get to the audience as soon as the trustees have said their say, okay?
I'd like to respond to some of the things you said, Sherry. I agree with some of them, surprisingly.
Hallelujah!
Surprisingly. I think there are many good things in this ordinance, but I personally think that it's on a weak foundation, partly because of the process. But let me go back through some of the things you've said. You mentioned the deer population. I believe Chuck cited that the deer population went down 50% from last year.
Not from last year, from 10 years ago.
10 years.
Well, he indicated that it did from last year,
10 years
from the
ago.
preceding years.
No,
But
10
if
years
you
ago.
look at the, if you add in the counts that the Lake Forest, the Lake County Forest Preserve did, it turns out it's gone down a little bit, but not significantly. So I think that is just indeterminate at this point, that the deer population appears to have gone down slightly, but not, we don't know that for sure.
Excuse me. We're taking Chuck's numbers and using his numbers. We're not taking anybody else's numbers because we can't compare that to ours because we didn't take